More than 140 people have lost their lives in the Tianjin chemical blast. Now China has detained 12. Piracy in Southeast Asia isn't anything new, but there have been more attacks this year than in the past 7. Plus, on the eve of going to court on charges stemming from the Occupy movement, Scholarism's Joshua Wong faces new charges. These stories are coming up next. This is the Asia Brief. Greetings and salutations, my excellent friends. Steve Miller here on this wonderful Friday, August 28, 2015. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've hoped you enjoyed the return of the Asia Brief as a daily news update. So, if you have, please let me know via Twitter. You can find me at Steve Miller ANW, and of course the show at Asia News Weekly. Now, let's get cracking with our very first story. Officials in China have started taking action against those they feel are responsible for the deadly chemical explosion that killed at least 145 people and injured well over 700. First, Xinhua News reported that Yang Dongliang had been removed from his position as Chief of the State Administration of Work Safety. The news agency said an investigation into Yang on corruption charges began after the deadly blast. He is suspected of serious breaches of discipline and the law, the report said, rather than calling him out explicitly for corruption. No specific details were released, and Yang wasn't available for comment. Given the international attention, China, of course, will make an example of those responsible, and Yang could very well be dirty. But the timing of all of this is a little suspect, and the case could be made that officials simply needed a scapegoat. So why not go for the head of the safety organization? Speaking of holding those accountable for the blast, 12 have been officially detained for dereliction of duty or abuse of power. The chairman, vice chairman, and 3 deputy general managers of the Tianjin Ruhai International Logistics Company Limited, the owner of the warehouse that exploded, were among those criminally detained, according to Xinhua News. In addition, Zheng Qingwei, chairman of the Tianjin Port Holdings, which is the facility's main operator, is under investigation for dereliction of duty. The state prosecutor noted an investigation found officials from various agencies were irresponsible, negligent, and lax in the supervision of the site. Look, it's no secret there's corruption, and things slid by. Those that held positions of influence should be held accountable. But it's equally important to diligently investigate the cause of the tragedy and not go off on a witch hunt. There have been more pirate attacks this year in the Malacca and Singapore Straits than any other since 2008. More than 70 ships have fallen prey in 2015 as of last week. Michael Storgard, spokesman for the world's largest shipping firm, Maersk Line, which had one of their vessels recently attacked, said, quote, "We have in general recommended that vessels proceeding to Singapore and passing Malaysian waters take appropriate security measures," end quote. Due to the increase in pirate activity, the Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency has deployed a helicopter-equipped Special Task and Rescue, or STAR, team at Johor Bahru. The team would respond to robbery and hijacking incidents and sometimes operate on vessels managed by other ships. The STAR team is in addition to the other Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency personnel tasked to combat anti-piracy sea robbery. I can't tell you the number of personnel, but it is formidable enough to undertake any anti-hijacking operations, said the admiral in charge of the organization's Crime Investigations Department. Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia also currently operate anti-piracy patrols in the area, but have limited resources. Unfortunately, the sheltered coasts and islands make it easy for robbers to operate. The International Maritime Bureau said that 84 of some 106 piracy incidents have occurred in Southeast Asia this year. In fact, the latest attack took place in the waters off of Indonesia this week. While the attacks in the Malacca and Singapore Straits are usually perpetrated by lightly armed thieves rather than the violent criminals we see in the Somali waters, it doesn't diminish the problem. Rather than simple patrols, regional partners need to band together, step up their game, and eradicate the problem. If the United States truly wishes to cement their commitment to the region, lending additional support to this goal would go a long way. To Beijing's credit, they will hold joint maritime drills with Malaysia in the Strait of Malacca. According to Chinese Defense Ministry spokesman Yang Yujin, the drills will focus on disaster relief, search and rescue, and hijack rescue. And that is great, but it misses the mark on the issue. The focus needs to be on prevention. Today, Umbrella Movement student leader Joshua Wong and Alex Chow are due in Hong Kong court to face charges of obstructing police, but officials aren't done with the young charismatic leaders. On Thursday, authorities charged Wong with unlawful assembly and inciting others to take part in an unlawful assembly. The charges could result in a sentence of up to 5 years and stem from a student protest nearly a year ago, when some protesters climbed into a square which is part of the city government complex. Wong lashed out at police, calling the entire ordeal a political prosecution and akin to a witch hunt. Wong said, quote, "Being involved in the civic square action is the best mission I have made in the 4 years I've been involved in the social student movements. I will not regret it, even if I have to pay the price." End quote. Alex Chow and Nathan Law, the other prominent student leaders, also received additional criminal complaints. Surya Deva, associate professor at the School of Law at the City University of Hong Kong, told AFP, quote, "The police were waiting for the right opportunity, so they wanted everything to die down. It was not a complicated criminal investigation. They should not be taking almost 1 year to prosecute someone." End quote. And that, my friends, is absolutely correct. Just like with the protests last year, Beijing held all the cards and could wait things out. When momentum started to wane, it stepped in and swatted down the movement. Now, a year later, those in charge are ready to punish those they feel interfered with their grand design when resistance is minimal and try to make everyone involved be made an example of. Sadly, this, like the Umbrella Movement, will do little to promote true democracy in Hong Kong. Beijing is in the driver's seat, and nothing the pan-Democrats or the student leaders have done to date has put 1 ounce of pressure on the central government that would make them even consider having dialogue to change the status quo. A better plan is needed, or else they'll essentially keep banging their heads up against the wall, and that does nothing but solidify Beijing's control. Well, my friends, those are today's stories, and I hope you'll let me know your thoughts by sharing them in the comments on Facebook or Twitter. And of course, this being Friday, that's it for me as well. I'll be back next week, so have a great weekend. The Asia Brief is a special feature of the Asia News Weekly podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with your friends, and if you haven't, subscribe. Subscribing is free, and when you do, the next episode is delivered automatically to you. You can subscribe on our website, asianewsweekly.net, or in your favorite podcast application. You can also keep up with more news from the region by following Asia News Weekly on Facebook or Twitter. And if you have any comments, questions, or feedback, be sure to drop us a line. That email address is podcast@asianewsweekly.net. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, remember to be true to yourself and to always be awesome.